Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here, getting back from the weekend, seeing some positive action in Bitcoin and some of the alts. It's a good bounce off the lows, so I'm gonna keep it short today, go over just a handful of names. We'll talk Bitcoin, we'll look at Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and the Litecoin chart. And the three alts I'm gonna look at will be comparative to the BTC chart. So looking at BTC here real quick, a couple of things to note here. We had that big break late last week after failing to clear that 4100 level, and then it just really continued downward, and then we went sideways again in this very choppy, very wicked consolidation here with just, it may be hard to see on the screen here, but there was just huge wicks, both directions, each way. You know, if you're trying to keep tight stops or buy the dips, it was just very shaky. I made the mistake of trying to trade this a little bit here over the weekend to mostly frustration. Finally caught a little bit of a drop here on the short side, but then that really didn't see any follow through before we saw this move here today. So covered earlier before that big rally, luckily. But a couple of things to note. This is actually very positive for the bulls, and the reason is I was watching this level here as a secondary level. First big break, and it was starting to form a little bit of a bear pennant. And then we saw that big break, which really couldn't see much follow through to the downside. It was bouncing a little bit here, starting to form another small bear flag on the 1 hour. But notice where the support came in. The support around that 34.75 was that last bit of support that I pointed out in the prior video. And below that, there really wasn't a lot of support until around 3,300, and then down, of course, near the recent lows. And so the fact that it held was positive. There were two scenarios that I outlined that the bulls wanted to see today. The first was a push through 3,600 and one that would hold, and that would get prices right back in this range, signifying this was potentially a false breakdown and a quick recovery. Of course, volume needed to come in on that. The other scenario was this bear flag would continue. We'd see a break, but it would just retest that low and then a push higher. Of course, we saw scenario one play out, and luckily that went right through 36 and nearly to 3,700, and so far is holding. Now, this is coming off of the back of a pretty strong down move here with some good volume, so I don't expect the sellers to just give up quickly, but the fact that prices were able to push right back above that 3,600 level and hold so far is very positive. Came on some pretty good volume, not mega volume, but certainly some pretty good volume. Nice to see, and many of the alts are trying to find a low here. So potential low being placed. Nothing confirmed yet. This is really just day one of this move off the lows, but it is positive, especially coming off of this little shakeout we saw. Looking at the indicators here very quickly, may be hard to see, but there's barely even a red tick into the red zone on the MACD following this big move lower, went green, started to roll over, and it did create a nice bullish divergence from the MACD histogram perspective before prices pushed back up. So liking what I'm seeing so far. Now we want to see some follow through. It's pausing right here. It's normal, kind of expected to see this pause, but as long as it's holding above this little level here, that's going to be positive going forward. And of course, on the upside, next resistance to be watching here, it's going to be that prior break of support around that 37.50, 37.40, in and around there. And then of course, the recent highs that we saw here above that 4K level. So those are really the next two levels to be watching. If we break above that 37.50, pretty good chance we're going to retest these prior highs. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for. And of course, if this fails, then a retest of the lows here around 34.75 level, in and around there. But the positive thing is we were looking for a potential higher low on the bigger time frames, on both the daily and the weekly time frames, and this is starting to form that potential higher low on that weekly chart. So if this holds, that's going to be very positive in the intermediate term to begin turning that trend. Remember, this big rally that we saw here ultimately failed right at the weekly 10 EMA, and the fact that prices pulled back and are finding a potential higher low, we need confirmation, of course, but if they can begin rallying off of here, that'd be very good in the bigger picture to start turning that broader trend. Keep in mind, the big picture trend is still very much in a downtrend, and this has been so far a bear market bounce. But in order for that broader trend to begin turning, you need to start seeing those series of higher lows and higher highs starting to form and ultimately breaking above those key moving averages so that things can start to turn the corner there. So big picture, something to be watching here. It's looking positive if this low can hold. Looking at Ethereum, this is versus the BTC pair. After breaking that uptrend, very strong uptrend prices were in, we've seen a pretty good move downward, and here today breaking above a little bit of a downtrend resistance line on some good volume, so it's good to see. It's also important to note that this came right around some near-term support levels, so there's a little bit of a support zone there. Prices have pulled right back, found a low just above that, and are now starting to break above and hold tight here for the last couple of candles. So may have found a low for ETH. Personally, I'd like to see a retest rather than just another leg higher. It certainly could, considering that the last couple of 4-hour candles are just sitting tight, forming a little bit of a bull flag on the shorter time frames. But a retest here of this trend line marking a higher low would give a lot more confidence, and I'd like to see a move off of there from there. And so next resistance going to be right around that 3,700 or so on the move up if it continues. Otherwise, I'm going to be looking for a potential retest of this support that was found here today. Taking a look at Bitcoin Cash versus BTC here, still on my radar. I'm watching this little bit of a downtrend. Again, still has not cleared to the upside, but it is potentially finding a little bit of a double bottom low here, right around that 618 Fibonacci retracement of this entire rally, that really strong move we saw here towards the end of December. Prices have just really been drifting and retracing this move so far, but they're right around that 618 level on that fib retracement, potentially forming a little bit of a low here on this 4-hour chart. So gonna keep an eye on it, but I want to see some more upside strength here. Volume was a little bit above average, not huge, but it was starting to come in here as prices pushed higher. Confirmation will be clearing this near-term resistance around 374, and then of course breaking that downtrend line, and that could kick off a little bit of a counter trend rally following this big pullback that we've seen. So I'm watching it here to see if this low holds. Looking pretty good right now, but we need to see some confirmation to the upside. And finally, Litecoin. Now, Litecoin has been trending upwards, and this is looking like a potential secondary entry, a throwback entry. It's been in this little bit of a rising trend here, but really the way I'm looking at it is it had this breakout last week, followed by that strong rally, finally topped. And notice we're seeing a pullback right into that zone right there. And so that's a little bit of a confluence of two support levels. You got the prior breakout zone, which has now been touched on a retest, as well as this rising trend line, which so far is holding. So we can begin to see some support show up here, which so far it is. That'd be an ideal place to look at it for a potential secondary entry and a resumption of this broader uptrend that it's been in. The daily chart looks pretty good, still holding up well, relatively speaking, considering the move that we saw in Bitcoin, and still above the breakout point here from last week. So liking Litecoin here for a potential secondary entry. I'm going to be keeping an eye on a lot of these to see if they can start to form these maybe small double bottoms here on the 4-hour chart, or start to clear above this recent swing highs and turn the corner and start making higher highs and higher lows. So gonna keep it short today, guys. Battling a little bit of a head cold. Hopefully it didn't come across the mic too much, but will schedule a live stream for later this week, likely Wednesday, maybe Thursday. But until then, thanks for watching. See you then. Take care, everyone.